So they might be concerned about that. If you have so much brand value at risk,
yeah, no, I think
might be more concerned.
I completely agree. I mean, I think that's a big factor. I mean, I think a big factor which drives these firms like Walmart or Coca-Cola, all these companies, Kia, etc. You know, on and on and on. What drives these firms is a concern about reputation risks, Nike, you know, all that stuff, right? And they're very vulnerable. I mean, the Kimberley process was exactly the example, the nightmare story where the woman declines the diamond, right? That's a reputation risk story. I think that's a big part of the story. I think the negative publicity terrifies these companies, and I think they put in a lot of effort into seeing that they're not associated with a bad thing. I think that matters. Okay, I think that's a big factor which drives these firms. They're terrified about the brand vulnerability. Are they really that vulnerable? You know, I don't know. I mean, the diamond industry was very worried about that movie. It had no impact. You know, Nike sales, did they go down? Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. You know, it's hard to know. I don't see a big impact, but I think companies worry about the impact. And if you're Coke, you know, and it's the same product competing with Pepsi, well, you don't want to have anything to disadvantage you. So, you know, I think reputation and risk matter. I think that's why that's a big motivation for these brands. You know, Apple's been in trouble recently, last will die, whatever. Has that affected the sales of Apple's products? Well, of course not. Everyone's falling over themselves to get an iPad, right? Now the iPad 2, right? I mean, it's an incredibly exciting product, and everyone loves Apple products. Okay, so it has no impact on sales. Okay, does Apple? People feel guilty. People I talk to feel guilty. Yeah, well, Apple's so great. What can I do? I want, you know, iPad 2. However, does Apple care? Sure. Why shouldn't it care? Has a lot of money, a lot of resources. Doesn't want to be seen as a company whose products are killing people. Yeah. How much is it going to do? It'll do enough. Can it afford it? Sure. What portion of the costs are going to fall on that factory owner in China versus Apple? Will they pay a little more for the product? No. And that's actually a big part of the story. I mean, you know, I was talking to someone at the Gap. Okay, you all know the Gap, big global firm. I think it's the largest global retailer of many clothing products. Okay, so they have a big thing on labor standards. You know, big. They take this very seriously. Okay, they're a big player. They have all these codes, etc. Inspectors and stuff. So I say to the woman, they were giving a lecture on CSR. So I said, do you pay more for your products, your textile products, your clothing products, from these, you know, factories which have improved their standards? And the answer, of course, is no. Somehow, the factory owners have to figure out a way. Now, the good news is they're all win-win stories. So, for example, the Gap argues. I'll give you an example. Okay, the Gap says, we tell these factory owners, install better lighting in the factories. This will cost you more money, but it will make make the work better for the work. It'll be better for the workers, and they'll be more productive. So that's like a win-win story. Right? Have it occurred to the person to do that. So you put the lighting in, nice facilities, you know, sanitation facilities, not usually expensive, and the productivity goes up. Now, what happens if they have to install all this stuff and productivity doesn't go up? Well, then the guy who runs that owns that factory is a little poorer. He's paying for the virtue of Gap consumers in San Francisco. It's a tough world. It's a tough world. Yes?
What's your vision of the win-win situation when developed countries want developing countries to accept their standards? Your rational account of it would be best for all if local governments or local legislation would adopt the standards that have been developing in the West.
Well, I wouldn't go that far, but would have reasonable standards that were appropriate to them.
Yeah, and I fully agree. Not the best standards,
and enforce them.
Yeah, and enforce them. So I can see that that is beneficial, but I can also see that developing countries kind of would be reluctant to take on board all the things that they have been thrown at from the West.
Yeah, right. Not going to take all of them.
Right. So how
they might take a few.
How is it possible to create a win-win situation that make these alien standards more acceptable for countries that are just developing?
Well, I mean, it depends on what the depends on the standards make sense. Take fisheries, for example. Okay, so does it make sense for a developing country to better manage their fishery stocks, so as to make fish sustainable? Okay, right. That makes sense. Okay. I mean, you have countries where people, particularly on tropical fish, ornamental fish, where they blow up, the reefs with dynamite, etc. So, would it make sense, or forestry practices, right? Are there things which would make sense in the long run? Managing these resources better would be in your interest, right? Would be better, right? So, Indonesia is better off if people don't illegally cut wood, only to cut wood with permission. So in that sense, or protection of natural habitats to protect biodiversity, help tourism, and protect endangered species. So I think there are certainly occasions or examples when one can make a plausible case that improving environmental practices in a developing country does make economic sense for them, does make business sense for them. Not always, though. I agree, but sometimes it could. So you have a lot of this stuff in Africa, right, where countries, are focusing on tourism, people look at wild animals, and to pay to protect these species. So I mean, I think there are, or particular niches. So you have organic cotton exports, organic flowers, all that, So there are, fair trade. There are, market niches which these things can work out. Are there a lot of them? I don't know. Are there more than zero? Yeah. Could we come up with more? Yes. But I think that is the issue, is to what extent do these things make sense for these countries? I mean, is it in the interest of China to enable people in Shanghai to breathe? Yeah, I think one can make a plausible argument that makes sense.
We are all in a business school, and so we all appreciate 4 boxes. So when we talk about win-win, we are talking only about the upper right box.
Yeah, right.
What about the left?
Yeah, well, there's a big world out there. I agree. I would be the last to deny that. I mean, I'm not trying to suggest that they're typical, common, overwhelming. I think they exist. I think there are more of them than we have thought of. But I don't think they're. I think a lot of things don't fall in those categories. I agree, and they're really rough.
What do we do about them?
Citizens have to be willing to pressure governments and pay a higher price, right? We have to. At the end of the day, environmental quality or improved labor standards cost money.
But the citizens are the consumers, and you were fairly skeptical about this.
No, but they will do it with public pressure. Okay, so public pressure. I mean, no one has ever asked, in their right mind, an individual consumer of an automobile, would you prefer to buy a car with a catalytic converter that didn't emit lead into the air? No one in their right mind has ever thought to ask any consumer that question. That would be an insane question to ask. How come we have no more lead from lead in gasoline in the United States and Europe? Through public policy. Does it mean that gasoline is more expensive? Sure, but it's coerced. That's how it takes. That's right. We don't rely on consumers.
Paternalism case.
Yeah, I mean that's true of most public policies. We just force people to. We force them to pay more, and we don't give them a choice. Now, presumably, consumers could get together in Europe and they could say, well, we're paying too much for these automobiles, and we would like cheaper automobiles with no catalytic converters, and we would like lead to go back into the air so our children can breathe it while they're playing in their playground. Now, one could have such a political movement, and the public policy would change. I don't see the mass of consumers in the United States and Europe demanding lead in the air. but they could.
You don't have a lot of faith in consumers. I am more hopeful. I think people are becoming more aware, even people from lower social backgrounds, and there's a lot of more information out there than 10 years ago.
A lot of information, a lot more confusing information.
I know, but still, we are more aware of health, toxics, and of course there are more toxics, so of course we are more aware. That's the other side of the story. But I think I agree that consumers are a bit tired of the word green, and I think if we are looking for win-wins, I think we should focus more on quality again.
Okay.
So in that case, there's a role to play for firms to really show, look, this product is really beneficial and it will be a lot more sustainable. It will last for 25 years, for example, this bottle.
Why would I want to sell you a bottle that would last for 55 years when I want you to sell a bottle that would last for 65 days, so you buy another bottle?
5 years or 3 years, but not buy, a polyethylene bottle every time you want to drink water, but just use a bottle like this and just fill it. So if you see that benefit, and also it will pay you back enormously financially, because if you also this bottle is made, for example, without any toxics, it's antibacterial, so I think that this is just a nice example where you see where you see a win-win, and not only focusing on the environmental benefits, but really also focusing on price, quality, and
I think these are niche markets. I don't see them as mass markets. I think the average person who wants to drink water buys a bottle filled with water already.
Yeah, but also you see, for example, I'm quite into water at the moment. In the Netherlands, you see many NGOs really focusing on the promotion of tap water. It must be there.
Yeah, we have a little thing in the US, focusing on tap water. Yes, that is a little movement in Berkeley, right, where people say carry tap water. That's right.
So there's such a lot of information stream being hit at the consumers, and they're just woken up like, it's actually very, very stupid. We don't even recycle them, although polyethylene is made to be recycled.
Yeah.
And also there's still a toxic in there, it's not healthy, or you cannot clean the polyethylene bottle, whereas you can clean this properly. So the more information is out there, the more people start to, it's here, and also it tastes back. So
okay, well I would, so I would suggest to you that if we meet again 5 years from now,
we
will see who's right.
Okay.
I wouldn't bet on you. I mean, it could happen. I mean, I know there's this big movement against bottled water. It's the same thing like the detergents, why transport all this water. But, there's brands, it's convenience. I don't see a big, and so even if, there's less water, so there'll be something else.
But coming back to the first remark,
I just think that,
I think we should focus more on quality.
Yeah, I can imagine that particular consumers and particular products could get excited about, like the water. Okay, but I can't see it as a broad aspect of aspect of your life. So you might care about the water, but there's a limited number of things that you will devote as much attention to as the water, which you obviously know a lot about. You have limited time, and so, are you going to extend it to the clothing you're wearing? No. Too much trouble.
Eco and everything, so but I'm the exception.
Yeah,
so.
okay, right. That's more.
Yeah.
Yes.
I just want to know, there is a situation which will also even in which when a company wants standards to increase in developing countries as far as they supply, whether they provide resources for the suppliers to actually increase or upgrade their standards, because that would be a win-win, right?
Yeah, that would be good if they were to do that. Yeah,
you don't have people getting out of jobs, you don't have the
right. I mean,